And I'm now joined in studio by Mombasa Senator Hassan Omar. Hassan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sophia.
And I think the first place to begin this conversation, because the last time we hosted you, it was again after, some incident in Mombasa.
Absolutely.
And this time around Sunday, the mosque incident, what is your understanding of what happened? Because we've seen the news reports, this is what the police are saying. Of course, the youth, we've had the parents also speak out with their children that have been held.
I think Sunday events do actually demonstrate to us as leaders, particularly of Mombasa, that the situation is moving from bad to worse. I think the sheer audacity on both sides is getting to a point where, unless there is both a political and a general intervention by all the formations of the Mombasa society, I think the risk of escalation is real. And our question, or our concern, is, despite this myriad of interventions for the last 5-6 years, I've been speaking about these things since I was in the commission. I'm quite knowledgeable about some of these issues because I was presently there during the whole evolution of this crisis, from whatever it was 5 years ago to the escalation we see now. We always pointed out to the wrong strategies being employed. Sophia, an idea, whether extreme or not, cannot be nipped purely by securistic means. There has to be a broader approach. They are the social functions of that idea, of that issue. They are the ideological functions. And therefore, I think it was important, and I said it many years, and these are advisories from some of the leading security experts in the world, people who have formulated these strategies. They, in fact, even in countries which we have borrowed almost whole scale, that the implementation of these strategies have particularly shifted focus and strategy because of the realization that you need to bring stakeholders on board so that these strategies might succeed. So I think what has happened is an unfortunate escalation.
And we saw Sunday the police claim and say that they had been outside the mosque, had asked for this youth and the individuals that were inside to come out for many hours, and that did not happen, and that it is because they tested their patience in as far as getting to try them in engagement, then that resulted to force.
Yeah, the police say a lot of things. The only time the police is ever believed is when they say things about Muslim youth or issues around MRC, things that annoy us immensely as Kenyans. But all the other times the police I never believed. When they say that Bana hit Wetangula's car, nobody believes them. They were giving us updates out of the wastegate. In fact, KTN and the Standard Media Group has been a direct victim of telling the truth when they give us a totally different theory. They tell us they're burning mattresses now, they're in the last assault, we have killed 11 of them. And the Standard Group is able to reveal there was no last assault.
So are you saying they're lying?
I think unless their versions are put to strict proof. The first version was that the police officer, and we send our deepest condolences, was killed by a bullet. I remember we called each other as leaders of Mombasa, and we said we must, those of us who are out of Mombasa, we're even looking for we're trying to get the governor in Japan. We said that body should not be touched until we pay for the post-mortem. And eventually the whole storyline shifted. So I think because we knew that if a bullet had been fired, then it is important for us to ensure that we get to the bottom of it. By the time we were trying to offer all these interventions, we had committed ourselves to independent pathologists and everybody else to do a thorough examination. We had offered to even pay for international ballistic experts to come. And then the whole storyline just changed.
But to focus on just what happened on Sunday a little bit more, we saw and have heard about the posters and the leaflets that had been spread to call for this particular convention, for the strong, to be part of. And you saw the flags as well. They have guns, and it resembled some of those we've seen in Al-Shabaab training. So in as far as the kind of meeting this was, first, what do you make of that? And the fact that they had been calling for people weeks before Sunday.
In fact, actually, the mobilization escalated on Friday, leading to the Sunday. And all of us were privy to these articles. So our general question is what was done in terms of the interventions to avert this potential. But that said and done, you see, I I have studied these types of movements for a long time, and they are masters in terms of playing to the public gallery. They realize that they have now positioned the security agency in a very reactive format. They are no longer proactive. They've lost the initiative to them, and therefore they now can control the proceedings. So what do? These guys have already perpetuated a state of fear. They are now having the moral advantage in terms of the psychology. So what do? You sometimes brand in such a manner as to escalate their concerns a lot more. So I think anybody can go onto the programs on the computers and do these types of theatrics. Go and print a flag that is black in color with inscribed "There's no one to be worshipped but Allah," and hang them out. So I think that's said and done. It is our lack of understanding of how these social movements are constructed, or how these types of organization are positioned in terms of constantly winning public profile, even if it is negative. So I think they play directly into these hands. I have warned them. I have told them. I was elected merely because also the young people agree with part of our ideas of how to handle these types of issues. I was an unlikely winner of the Senate elections in Mombasa, but it was because some of us manifest the kind of desperation and despair that was there, and offered a glimmer of hope in terms of refocusing the strategies. And we had written literally an entire paper of how to reposition the strategies. I have spoken about it in every forum, and the security agencies will bear witness that you are hitting a dead wall, a dead end. Please realign your strategies. Have these strategies. Engagement.
So what is the proposal? What strategy have you proposed?
What you see first and foremost, there needs to be an entire psychological shift. This is what countries in the West and other countries that have faced similar challenges have had.
Right.
They have had to have a direct psychological shift. In Kenya, as much as we're not ideologically, clustered, it's very easy to see where somebody belongs. If you look at the Kenyan government and its construction, it is actually center-right. It is close to the Republican. They are very securistic in their approach. They like to escalate fear. They like to escalate. Whereas you need a center-right left strategy, the Obama type, which is fairly more laced in certain fundamental values. So when you continue to apply the same theory of fanatical security approach, simply sanitized by the fact that you have the power of state, they also now, these are the disorganized groups, or these are the groups that are more ragtag, are able now to feed onto that type of a scenario. So we have always asked for a realignment, so as to match with the broader realities, contextualize this struggle or these strategies within the broader, narrative. And you see the narrative here, whether we like it or not, is this war is a war against Islam. And therefore, who is the most critical constituency in winning the hearts and minds?
Is it a war against Islam? Really?
Personally, I don't believe in the narrative, but it is the dominant narrative. And because it's the dominant narrative, you have to deal with it. And it doesn't help when that dominant narrative sometimes has the scenes that are so demonstrated in the public domain and media. You see, you can have all the anger that you want. I've seen the anger directed at me and my friend Abdul Samad, the MP from Veta. You can have all the anger that you want. You can say all the, post all those kinds of messages. It doesn't help the situation. You simply strengthen the resolve. These ones remain on this side, and these ones remain on that side.
The other side.
I told the security apparatus, and we've agreed to have a consultative meeting. That the truth is we are not moving nowhere. And the little sympathy that we are getting in terms of public capital that was expressed by some of us is rolled back on the basis that that some of the transgressions challenge the very essence of our faith. So I think they need to listen to us a little more, because I think the digital framework is such that it has to come with new ideas. It's not just about having the latest phone in the market and an S3 Note or something.
But you criticized the move by the police to go into the mosque and to flash the people who were inside out. But given the circumstances and what they said they found in there, an AK-47, we saw some of those crude weaponry. What then other way did they have to deal with this particular situation, with what the information they had was going on, the kind of radicalization, the kind of message that was being put out?
Sophia, if you look at this word radicalization, extremism, everywhere in the world, they try to fight these issues, but every other time they take people to court, particularly in democratic countries, they've never been able to stand the test of prosecution.
Right.
Because the argument, even sometimes by the defense lawyers, who even as a matter of strategy are usually people who are non-Muslims, argue that some of these issues are prescribed in the Quran. The only place where you go in excess of the Constitution is if you literally now pick up that gun and shoot somebody. But before that,
but if you have it, that means there's an intent already.
No, but listen, there's no intent. What I know is for a fact that the radicalization or whatever this whole issue, crisis that we're facing is for real. The thing is, the police had means and ways to avert this potential. They're in touch with us every other day. They know how to access half or even more than almost all the leaders of Mombasa. There were ways we could have gotten into some discussions as to how to avert the possibility of this event taking place in the first place. It is not something that was sporadic. It was something that was deliberate. And I think some of these youngsters are personally known to us, 16, 17-year-olds who see me on the streets and just wave at you, and you wave back, and you're like, they believe that what they're doing is right. So how do you, even if you take them into jail, they feel that is part of the hardships that come with struggle. Yeah. So this kind of a situation is such that unless you involve us in a manner that is genuine, and whether, as I said, even whether you yap about it, whether you have anger that you demonstrate in the social media, the truth is the critical constituency, and this is acknowledged everywhere, that the critical constituency is the Muslim constituency, because they are the ones that are most directly affected inwardly and outwardly. Inwardly, because it is our children, it is our brothers, it is our youngsters. Outwardly, in the sense that it has a direct impact in terms of the victimization, holistically sometimes, of the community, particularly when you have ignorance that in terms of dealing, or the lack of respect of the Constitution. And therefore what happens is, one of the reasons why we are firm is once you start to play with this mob psychology about how you just deal with an entire community as a community, that's when now we have the problem that we have, where you victimize an entire community rather than follow the leaders or the ringleaders and whatever you're trying to achieve. Yeah,
you said you knew about this. You heard about the messages being sent out for the people to come. You're talking about the police having also known, did not do anything to engage you as the leadership. But as the leadership, because you said very clearly it is an issue that involves and requires involvement of the various stakeholders. So what are you, as the senator, the governor, the other leaders in Mombasa doing, other than making these suggestions and proposal? What else? Because clearly more needs to be done, because that hasn't worked in the past, what you've done.
Absolutely. What we are doing is hardly a few months old. Okay. Because we were just recently elected to these positions. Right. And we have to deal with the whole system that has crystallized, from the ATPU to the mind state, or the psychology of state. It's a very, very difficult disposition. So what we have done is we have partnered with the think tanks and organizations, Haki Africa, some of our friends in other initiatives of this nature, to try and develop a blueprint and curriculum that can be able to give us an intervention. And I remember I've said many a times, the real theater will be Masjid Musa. For those of you who have the courage to go face off at Masjid Musa, not with bullets, but with words. Words don't kill. You just have a debate. And I've once in a while told the youngsters, we're ignorant. Can you have a debate with us? So I think the truth is, it's something we live with in the society. And until you are able to radically shift the dispositioning of state, and some of us will be, if I just was to bring a political connotation, some of us, part of the reasons we were rejecting the political opposition, the opponent adversaries that we had, and favored the coalition that we were in, is basically partly based on security positioning. That we had seen a whole host of violations. And you have to realize that if there's one thing that has not transformed, even after the change of government, is the change of the security and its leadership. It is almost intact. There's just vetting, which is based on bank accounts. It has not gone to necessarily values and your vision of policing. So I think what happens is we need to have a severe shift, and that shift is difficult. That's why some of us have taken the audacity to even go against the grain of public opinion, because this public opinion that we tend to be afraid of is what has gotten us into this kind of morass. It's an unfortunate situation. Okay. We sat down as part of our leaders and said, listen, we don't have to please anybody. We just need to achieve results, and we will take the bull by its horn, and we will achieve those results.
Okay, and it's not the first time the mosque, Masjid Musa, is making headlines in as far as the kind of messages that are put out in that particular mosque, in terms of like this particular convention, Abu Drogo, who preached in there. It is known what happens in this particular mosque. We're hearing some of the officers talking about a push and a move to ensure it is closed. What do you think is the solution? Because if you know a certain problem is in a certain place, why then is it so difficult? Or is it because it will just simply move to a different mosque?
It is because if you look at the diversity also of the youth who are arrested, they came from all parts of Mombasa, all Coast Province for that matter. We have received phone calls as far as Lamu, Malindi, and other places, other parts of the coast. So I think what happens is the idea has grown. It has been implanted, and when these executions take place, day in, day out, when these excesses appear to be imminent, it crystallizes those ideas. I think it is so basic logic. I remember, I'll tell you a very sad thing. I remember I went to pray in one of these mosques once, and as I walked out, I noticed that some youngsters, very youngsters, were carrying knives. I asked them, why are you carrying knives? He told me, you see, when we walk out of this mosque, we get executed, particularly in the evening, after the evening prayers. So before I get executed, nitachanja mtu. I told him, may Allah protect you. You know, to have come to a point where you so much lose faith in the ability of state to protect you. I've even discussed this. I said, I've felt fairly traumatized. So I said, so if I was to go, how many sheikhs, how many worshippers have been executed after dawn, after sunset, after our prayers. So we will not allow it. We will not just go down. So I said, but so the message there was the fact that they're acknowledging the total absence of state, and the fact that when a state is not trusted by a certain, even the smallest of minority, that it can provide their security, and then you have people reverting to carrying knives into mosques. Should they close that mosque? They should not even dare even think about it. In fact, I felt yesterday when I was in the security meeting, I thought that was the most ignorant position anybody could ever have had. I think you try to close that mosque. You see, the Muslims already feel marginalized. They're already a minority in this country. And minorities have a very easy way of jumping into victimhood. And I can tell you for a fact, it will degenerate into escalate beyond Masjid Musa. That is also to show you that when a state becomes insensitive to the larger aspirations. And as I was campaigning last year, I asked a very critical question. Last year, but one. Why is it whenever young people from the coast of the Muslims raise an idea, it becomes extreme, it becomes an issue of state security? I even asked some few scholars who I know. They tell me because the transgressions, the dispossessions, the marginalization in those areas are real. And therefore, if those ideas were to get some resonance, there was no way of stopping it. But the ideas are talking about cessation. The ideas are talking about separation from country. Those are extreme. They are extreme. I agree with you. But as I said, look, in the US, people are signing petitions to disengage themselves from the federation called the United States of America. I believe you know about those petitions. These are the strengths of democracy. Democracy must sometimes try to keep the boat in order by sometimes accommodating some of the most extreme of expressions. You know, I take no reservations. I've been looking at my social media posts, and I have not discouraged by a bit. What I thought existed does really exist, and some of the extremities, people say, we wish the mosque was bombed rather than even this other thing. Is a person who needs help, you know. So you look at it, and as leaders, you have to develop the courage sometimes to stand up on some of the issues that are fundamental.
Let's focus a little bit on the religious leaders, the other leaders, the imams, the sheikhs that are seen in these mosques. They know, they're very well aware of what is going on. They're in touch with the people. They know the other people coming in and spreading these messages. What is it, and do you feel they are to blame in as far as just helping curb this? Because on one hand, there is the cause that they're fighting for. But on the other hand, when you start seeing guns and the crude weaponry and all that, that in itself does not allow or does not make people believe this is somebody out for an engagement.
So let us wait for the cases before court to conclude, because we're trying them in a public process. I can tell me one conviction that they have had since they started this. They have alleged on all types of people, including Abu Drogo. They have always been acquitted by a competent court of law. So therefore, I think we will have to wait and see, because I think we know what defense is. So you know, we tend to, in media, always present the official dome in terms of theory lines, and the critical element of us as politicians is also sometimes to present the other side of the story, no matter how unkind it does appear or distasteful. But the second element is what you spoke about. There's a total disconnect between the religious leadership and its followership. So these are leaders without a congregation. So I think even if you ask any of them, the political people are much more able to mobilize. You know, some of them have tested their capacity in electoral processes. If you are a religious leader who commands respect, you have no reason to lose to some mere mortal. So that's said and done. I think you see people, these organizations it might not have generated sufficient political capital and credibility to rally the kind of followership that is inherent. So I think that's why we spoke even yesterday as part of the political leadership and said, listen, we have had mandates that are given to us through universal suffrage, and we need to acquire that space and position. So we see what happens is once this kind of things happen, the security agencies, in their wisdom or lack of it, will always call these institutions that are shells. You know?
Someone here is saying, Tomo Ching, I was just going through the feedback. Yes, when a mosque hoists the flag of Al-Shabaab, it becomes unholy. Hassan Omar should stop condoning radicalization. Also, religious leaders should abhor extremists preaching love and unity. And somebody else who's addressing a comment to you here is saying that, where did that comment disappear to? There was one just here. Yes, so does the senator, the kind senator, want us to believe that having a gun and crude weapon is fashionable as opposed to being a criminal, even if somebody is saying they have it for protection?
I say that we'll wait for the courts to make that arbitration. Well, we shall not. You see, as I said, you only believe the police when it comes to matters of our young people out there. So it's every other thing the police theory line does not hold. So that is also part of the profiling.
So you don't
and the
think all of that was there?
I'm not saying it was not there. We told them yesterday, take them to court. Let us test it in a court of law. And as we are testing it in a court of law, we need to have parallel processes.
As we test it, Senator.
Parallel processes. Why would I could even just use some logic. Why would I have an AK-47 and a mosque is under attack and I will not use even a bullet of it? So I think that's said and done. There are so many things that one has to tie. So as I said, I do not want a public trial in these matters. We are a democratic country. We believe in the presumption of innocence. We have voted for that constitution, some of us ignorantly so, because we just thought it was a document that your political leader thought was an expressway into the presidency. So I think what happens is we need to be very honest and critical in terms of that benefit of doubt which must be provided to all Kenyans. And I remember Mirugi Kariuki, the former assistant minister for internal security, who passed on in the fatal air crash, said a society is better judged by how best it treats the worst of itself. So I think that none of us is condoning radicalization, but as I said, you play into the theater of these young people, and they are able then and then you overreact or react in such a manner that your actions become so inappropriate that it escalates some very hostile feelings against a section of your population. You do not solve anything. And therefore, if you look at those messages, I am scanning them, I'm printing them by the day as they come in, because sometimes these records get lost. You look at the names against who is saying what, you will see that the divide is so refined. I saw in the social media people who have never, ever put a nice word about me, put a nice word for the first time. And you look at the name, you know why he or she has said that. Because it has literally divided us right down the middle. And I think for us who are leaders of cosmopolitan constituencies, it is concerning. Because we would tell the security apparatus, you don't have the kinds of responsibilities that we have, and vice versa, we don't have the kinds of responsibilities that you have. Yeah. So therefore, we need to see how to marry our responsibilities so that we can have a broader strategy that is comprehensive. I think over the weekend, Mutia Iringo and I were in Mombasa, just on Saturday before the attack on Sunday. So I think what happens is the incident on Sunday, so it is a willingness on our part, you see, to engage government for the general good of the society generally. But
also as politicians, another question that has come into focus is with this secessionist calls and the belief that needs to happen by those pushing and advocating for the same, is that there's politics as well coming into play, that there are some people, some figures behind, shadowy individuals that this works for in terms of if that happens. So it moves away from what the argument you hear put forward to some hidden agenda.
So who are these individuals? You see, I don't like this whole theories of evil geniuses all the time, puppeteering people with their own minds. You see, I think I like to give credit to its due, that people these days are critical enough, have sufficient information from media, from social media, from all forms of platforms to make very reasoned judgments. Yeah, the fact that we continue to be, gullible to certain propaganda, it also shows the uncritical nature. I keep saying how tribalist can we be, that you can be a Yale graduate but you feel duty bound to vote for your henchman. So that's said and done. The truth is we need to build that broader strategy. And I keep saying this. That's why my particular call is, if you do not engage stakeholders who are critical to this whole exercise, then I think it is.
And who are the stakeholders other than you, the leadership in Mombasa County? Who are the other stakeholders? Parents. I
don't ever underestimate that parents sometimes sometimes are persuaded by the general beliefs of their youngsters. Right. I was told by several parents that they were persuaded to vote for me because their young people, their daughters and sons, were so Hassan Omar, that's our boy. So that kind of a situation, so parents got influenced into it. Okay. So there are two ways parents can influence you. You can influence your parents. So I think the parents, the entire education system, the security leadership needs to dislocate its positioning. Right. The national government. So I think there are such critical stakeholders that the religious society of the broader diversity of Mombasa, Muslims and non-Muslims. So therefore, I think unless we have that broad strategy, we will always be reacting to these situations. I remember yesterday my friend Abdul Samad made a very important observation that this is the first time, which was yesterday, he has been called into a security meeting. Yeah. So he said, please, if you don't call me proactively in future, don't call me reactively in the future. So either you call me to be part of the solution, or don't call me at all when a problem has already occurred. So, and I think that should be the general modus operandi. Okay. Of our security services.
And as you say, you've begun this, setup and seeking a solution that will resolve this, because there are deep issues that need to be discussed and resolved, Senator. When do we see there bearing some fruit in as far as this situation is concerned? Because many are looking at this and worried for what some would argue would be a ticking time bomb, that you see a little bit of this, and one day it will just be this huge thing and it will be out of control.
You see, what we've decided is we're having a meeting at some point. Let me tell you something. These strategies will not change unless there's political will upstairs. Okay. So I think everybody felt the need. In fact, I was sent to some of them to talk to the leadership of the country, because it needs a shift of strategy. These people are reading from the same scripts, the same narrative. You see, these narratives have been rendered obsolete over the passage of time. Other strategies have been developed. Look at what is happening, because some people are taking a very small context of Mombasa. It is a regional problem, it is a sub-regional problem, it is a global problem. True. And therefore, if you look at different manifestations of these problems and how it has been resolved, look at what is happening in Afghanistan. They finally decided to engage the Taliban, because it's an idea. You just can't kill it. The US is talking to the Taliban in Qatar every day. the Afghan government, Karzai, is releasing senior commanders and leaders of the Taliban. He's trying to buy the peace and security and stability of his state. You might have all these, prepositions. We don't negotiate with anybody because you had George Bush say it once. But you can be sure. Look at what is happening in Iraq. Look at what is happening in Syria. Finally, people are on the table. There is no other way.
So there needs to be serious engagement with
serious engagement. I hope once the leadership has firmed up its position, which we will by this weekend, we hope that we can secure some audience somewhere where these issues will be discussed. But you see, you have to realize something. There's a security leadership that is intact. It has not been either replaced or transformed. It is, in fact, it is what has gotten, it is what ushered Uhuru in. And he has had severe reservations about its overhaul. And that leadership will hang onto a position because it is their survival. Because that position is broadly looking at also elements of how you transform, replace, retrain, reorient, an entire positioning of officials. I give this example. I once met a security expert from one of these countries from the West, and this man had a PhD in Islamic studies. He was not a Muslim. He had lived in one of these Islamic countries. He talks fluent Arabic. He knows the cultures. He knows the norms. He constantly is reading. When was the last time one of these security experts picked a book to read about emerging trends? They only wait for a small little workshop or a training where they learn a certificate. Reading must be a very natural preposition of somebody. So what happens is, I met him, and then you compare that officer with a basic officer here who's just come from Kiganjo, with some, some bit of orientation, who has been bombarded with the fact that he needs to provide national security. He does not realize national security itself has proactive and reactive, consequences, and how you position your proactive strategies. So I think what happens is we are challenging existing paradigms, and it will be very, very difficult. Sometimes it will face the kind of aberration you get from public, but when you want to challenge existing paradigms, you must, even if you will appear to have to soften stands on certain persons or institutions or groups. But I can tell you, those who tried these strategies with some of the most powerful militaries in the world have backed down. Even right now in Somalia, they are identifying what they call moderates, so that they can buy this peace and security of the entire Somalia. And this will not be dictated by our whims or anybody's whims. It will be dictated by the unique interest of Somalia. And therefore, we need to also dictate what are our unique interests. Why would we let a youngster, a Kenyan youngster, some of them, Sophia, are not ignorant. They are A students. I know some of them. So the guy who leads the Al-Shabaab cell in Kenya, in Somalia, was our classmate. He's an engineer from Jomo Kenyatta University. So they're not ignorant people, the way we put it. Why would they live a life of comfort and pursue a life of pain? So that's what we need to get down to the root of it, so that we identify the root causes and solve it.
But it's not all that are living a life of comfort. For some, this is an escape from unemployment, from poverty, and then when talking about radicalization and talking about some, we saw the report that Al-Shabaab, fertile ground Kenya is in terms of recruitment of these people. So there are such issues, again, that must be addressed in terms of the people who feel, well, there's nothing else but perhaps let me pursue this because then I'll have something to live for.
But you just captured the solution itself, the root causes, the poverty, the under-education, and therefore it becomes fertile ground, and it's fertile ground for all of us, because also we are radicalized oppositely. So they have a certain mind frame, and it is easier to plant certain seeds, and look at the kinds of seeds of Islamophobia that have been planted and xenophobia that have been planted on everybody else. So ignorance is on both sides. So unless sometimes, I always used to say, this human rights thing when I was there is such a high strategy. It's like the highest form of morality. It's like you have to accord the person you dislike most, the one who's alleged to have committed some of the most horrendous crimes, some of the most passionate safeguards of our democratic institutions and law. And so that's why we are not them. We are not terrorists. We are a state. And the state to start using the reactionary, distaste or the reactionary arguments that did you see what they did? Is not what civilized states do. They actually, unfortunately, have to apply the Constitution indiscriminately and equally to all persons.
Yes, we're seeing children. We saw some as young as 12, some of those that were arrested. And the police asked for 5 days, to allow everybody to be in there for investigations to be conducted. For that particular situation, what do you see? Do you see any positive results, any headway, or will it just be?
That's what concerns us most. You see, for me, the reality for me is firsthand. You see, for me, Mombasa is not a coastal that I go over weekends or to the beach. It is home. I will be there, and I will continue to be there, and generations will continue to be there. Nobody's going anywhere. So therefore, that said and done, I think it concerns me most when I see 12-year-olds. Yes, we have had all kinds of theories why they were there, because there was going to be free lunch. And the poverty, there was going to be biryani. If biryani can attract somebody in high office in Kenya, what if of the person who does not know where the next meal will come from? So I think for me, we have asked for an immediate processing, and therefore the minors must be released with immediate effect. And they say that's where the seeds get planted. That's why they say it in terms of radicalization when you're young. But you want to tell me that you're going to plant those seeds in jail. So I think that's it and done. There are ways in which any judicial system or legal system affords a certain intervention to its minors based on the fact that they know there are certain safeguards or certain interventions that you must offer minors so that they can be able to be reintegrated in society. So therefore, we need to have programs. Other countries have built, have very elaborate programs of de-radicalization. Yes. Many countries that I know of who face these kinds of programs. Though I don't also like to use some of those jargons they're coined in the West, and that's why they make our life extremely difficult. Language and jargon is very important in resolving a crisis. So that's why if you saw the beginning of the Syrian talks, the Secretary General of the UN was very firm to the Syrian government by using the words like terrorists, because then you alienate the people who you want to negotiate with. So I think that the reality, I hope Kenya just realizes it sooner than later. There are a lot of people who hang on to these strategies so zealously. They've all had to back down. They've withdrawn their troops. They're talking to the people they said they will not talk to. Because I think, and I hope, will not continue to use the same script that was applied in the yesteryears, because the moving forward, you need scripts that are a lot more progressive. A lot more progressive, because Kenya and the world is facing terror as a serious threat. And finally, Mheshimiwa, for that war against terror as a country, off of what we saw last year with the Westgate attack, there were numerous warnings. Look at what went down. And now we're hearing of the Al-Shabaab being out on recruitment drive. And there are many young people, not just in Mombasa, everywhere, even here in Nairobi, that will be so easily, buy into that ideology, buy into the group. In terms of wholesomely as a country, as a citizenry, the leadership, in facing this war that is very real, what must happen? I think first and foremost, there is what we call international initiative on the global compact strategy in countering terrorism, and I think it is very comprehensive, because it looks at it as a global problem. Because there's no front for jihad in Kenya. Probably you call it recruitment. In fact, even Somalia is no longer a lucrative front. The new lucrative fronts, if you look at the international jihadist movement, is actually in Syria, in Yemen, where initially in Mali, where they had acquired certain territorial advantage and had space for organization. So in fact, Somalia is less and less becoming a lucrative front. So for us, it's to ensure that we participate in regional and international efforts to bring peace and stability. And for us, the most immediate solution is to participate in every way possible to ensure lasting peace in Somalia. But Somali for Somalia, let the solutions come from Somalia. Let the Somali National Army now be able to restate its authority so that we build a Somali National Army to be able to take over. That's similarly, because the more you stay in any country, the more you start to lose public capital. There will be a small, something small that happens which will always be blamed onto you. And before you realize you've created almost a broad dissent. So I think what we need, but also the other thing is to disengage from these established notions. Unfortunately, Sophia, or fortunately, I represent everybody in Mombasa. Those you like, the good, the bad, the ugly, the alleged terrorist, the alleged whoever. And I have a responsibility, and my responsibilities are totally different now. So what you need to do is to ensure that we have a strategy that doesn't profile, that doesn't create this kind of xenophobic state of affairs, and engage in a very objective format. I'm hoping those who are listening to us who are policymakers will see some wisdom in our ideas, because I can tell you for a fact, this whole issue, and Kenyans bear me out, has moved from bad to worse. So the strategies are definitely not working. So therefore we need to up our game by having a more sophisticated strategy that targets the problem and is able to disarm the problem. And I'm confident that we will have that solution. And I think, notwithstanding how distasteful some of our words are, we are challenging existing paradigms and notions of how to deal, and the narrative. And to challenge it, you need to take position boldly in public domain. And I urge everybody to take those bold positions.
Okay, thank you very much, Hassan Omar, Senator Mombasa County, for being with us this morning.